past.
Yeah.
Have we, Grace and Sarah here?
Yeah.
Who are they?
That's both. Not sure where Sarah is. Hello, hi everybody. It's 1:15, so we're going to make a start. If I could just ask you to take your drinks and find your table, and we'll start in about 2 minutes. And I'm also a member of the DCAN delivery team with colleagues from NHS. I must admit, when we had to change the date to January because of the general election clash, I was concerned I'd be talking to an empty room. So I'm really, really pleased to see so many people have made the effort to come here very soon after the Christmas break. We have been hit by some illness, so there will be some sort of gaps we need to fill, so bear with us. But to see so many new faces as well, who I haven't met or we haven't had conversation or discussion around personalised care and dementia, it really is really pleasing for me to welcome you all here today. The theme of the day is developing a vision for personalised care and dementia. And there's a series of workshops and activities and presentations that we'll take you through today, but the real work is going to be happening with you and the tables that you're sitting on and the discussions that we're going to facilitate and encourage you to share your experience and your unique perspectives on dementia and also the impact personalised care can have from your perspective. I'm going to hand you over to Joe Harvey, who works for the NHS England Personalised Care Group team, who's going to be facilitating the majority of today. And Joe's going to introduce you to some of the ground rules and give you a bit more of an outline about what today's going to involve for you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. So as you can hear, I'm going to apologise first because I have a really bad throat. And because I have a really bad throat, I've brought a bell. Okay? So this is when you have, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 people in a room, it's quite hard to get people's attention when they're having really good conversations. So I'm just going to say, when the bell goes, please look at me, because otherwise I'm going to lose my voice completely by the end of the day if I have to shout to get everybody's attention. So that's what the bell's about, which is a kind of a bit of a cheeky way of doing this, really. So, as Ian says, welcome to our event today. So I'm going to do some of the kind of boring housekeeping-y stuff to get us started, really. So there's no fire alarm test due, and I have my instructions here as to what we have to do. We've got 2 fire exits. That one will take you back towards the lifts, and that one, he said that was the easiest one to go out. So maybe, unless the fire's that direction, go that way. And we just congregate down in Cooper's Row, which is literally this road out here. So if you hear a bell, then please do go. Actually, do you know what? I haven't found the toilets yet because I haven't managed to go. Anybody find the toilets? They're just out there, are they? Okay. They're out there. Sorry, I usually go and do a recce, and I didn't manage to do that. So. Brilliant. Okay, that's fantastic. So hand-drawn signs to show you where to go. If you're looking for Wi-Fi, which most people are, when you get to an event like this, it's just an open Wi-Fi. So if you want to use it, you're very welcome. I think it just says Royal Leonardo City Hotel Guest. Okay, so just use that. So just some ground rules, really, about being comfortable together throughout the day. So what we've got here is misery is optional. So what we mean by that is we do not want you to be miserable, but everybody is kind of an adult, so it's about letting some of us know in the room, any of the people that you can see around who look like they're organising, people with yellow badges who are facilitators, let people know if there's something we can do to help you feel more comfortable, really. Tell us about the temperature in the room. Now, I'm a woman of a certain age, and I've got maybe a slight temperature. So I feel really hot, so I'm not a good judge of the temperature in the room. So please do let me know if it feels too cold or if it feels too hot, because at the moment it feels like a sauna for me. So just make sure you do that. And I think you have to be of a certain age to work out what that film is, if you've ever seen it. So, and I can see some people laughing and nodding, but don't be miserable. Listen with respect. So it's just, you're going to do a lot of work on tables. We're here, it isn't a kind of an event where you get to sit and listen to lots of people. We're going to make you work really, really hard. So it's just making sure that everybody gets an opportunity to speak on the tables. That's what the table facilitator's job will partly be, is to make sure everybody's contributing. And it's about listening to people with respect. People have different levels of understanding about this whole area of work, and it's just making sure everybody gets that opportunity to be listened to. And then also, to go with that, it's about making sure we recognise that everybody's contribution counts to those conversations. And for table facilitators, that's about making sure that we everybody on your table gets to speak and join in. This is my favourite rule as a facilitator, is what we call the 5-minute rule. And I know that often we can get into conversations at events like this, at in fact, any meeting, where we get a little bit obsessed about what we're talking about. And often that's because we don't have an answer right here, right now. So we use something called the 5-minute rule. So if we are talking about something that we can't answer today because the answer isn't here with us in the room, then we just need to log it as an issue. And that's something your table facilitators can do. They can give it to some of us. It may be questions that we can answer. It may be questions we need to think as a group. Where do we go and get an answer for that? Maybe that we have to actually make the answer happen. Oh, we've got pieces of paper falling down already. So anybody can call the 5-minute rule. I'm likely to get into a bit of a discussion, and it's 10 minutes before I've realised that we're obsessing. So anybody can call that rule if they want to. Mobiles off on silent. It's absolutely fine if you need to take a call, but if you could step outside the room to do that, that would be really, really helpful. No such thing as a silly question. Please use the opportunity to ask questions around your table, or maybe to some of the presenters if need be. So do use that opportunity, and I promise you it won't be a silly question. If it feels a bit too silly to ask in front of everybody, grab that person over lunch or a break or something like that. And then the last one is give and get, which is not really a rule. It's more of a philosophy, I say, and that's give what you can to this day and get from it what you need to get from it. Is that okay? Does that all make sense? Are people kind of happy around that? Okay. So a few more things to tell you. If you want to tweet, we would love you to tweet. We're out of PERDA, which means we can tweet. If for anybody who's in NHS England, that's a word that just basically means we weren't allowed to do very much at all while the election was going on. But now we can tweet. So please, if you're going to tweet, be really good if you can use these hashtags. If you're thinking, what's she talking about? Don't worry, honestly. Those people who really, really like to use Twitter will be able to do that. So if you can use some of these hashtags, that would be fantastic. Please don't take photos of me. No, I'm joking. We will actually want to take photos throughout the day. So if you see somebody wandering around, and as you can see, we have the lovely John over here who's taking all sorts of things. I'm horrified there's a camera right in front of me, but anyway. It's John's birthday today, so we might have to sing to him a little bit later, okay? So just, when you're passing, John, just say happy birthday and be nice. But if you really do not want your picture taken, please do let us know, and we will just make sure that we avoid you being in the picture, if that's okay. Just a couple of other things then. So on the table, you will see some speaking cards, and this is really just to help people who are struggling a bit to speak up or be heard. And if you want to be able to speak, either in this larger group or around the table, please hold up that card. And anybody who sees that, and I haven't spotted it, because these lights are kind of a bit blinding up here actually, please just say, Joe, somebody's got a card up. But do use them if you want to have a speak up, but you don't feel able just to do that with your voice. So please use those cards there. On each of your tables, you will have a table facilitator. and they're kind of in charge of the table, but not really in a bossy way, just in a way they've got jobs to do. They've got notes that we've written them, telling them what jobs they've got to do, and but they're there to help you and help the work kind of flow, really. So you have a table facilitator and you have a kind of a backup facilitator. This poor old table over here hasn't got anybody at the moment because both Ian and I are up the front, nor has that table got anybody because Gemma's there as well. What I want to do in a minute, and it might be Ian, you need to run over there, is just get you to set up some more roles. So there's two other things I would like you to do on the tables, really. I want somebody who can act as a bit of a timekeeper. So I am notorious for saying, you've got 20 minutes to do this. I won't look at my watch and remember when that 20 minutes started. So it's really good if there's people on the table who just can keep the table facilitator to time as well, rather than them have to be thinking about time all the time. There's too many times in there. And then the other one is, we're terrible for using jargon, particularly in NHS England, I think. So I'm going to say that because I work for NHS England. So what we want is somebody on each table that just is what I've called a jargon gatekeeper. That's jargon in itself, isn't it? But somebody who can just say, what are you talking about? What the language? What's your language? Sounds really funny, doesn't it? But just, you know, remind people if they're using acronyms or just words that perhaps aren't making sense to everybody on the table. So I want you to sort those two roles out in just a minute. Hopefully, when you got sent the invitation, you will have been sent a one-page profile. And this will be our second activity of the day. So it's just making sure, if you didn't fill it out before you came, that's okay. We kind of expected that not everybody would have the chance to do that. But hopefully Sam will have given you one as you came in and got your badge. And just making sure that you've had a chance to just put a couple of things down there. And it says on the bottom, I give permission for DCAN to use parts of this profile in DCAN material. And I just, I asked, what did we mean by that? And nobody can really knows how we might use this. So what I will say, there may be photographs taken of some of the information. It may be that, you know, some of these will be captured on things that we're recording. So what I would say is only share what you're comfortable sharing. Okay, nobody needs to put down intimate details of their life, I promise you. It's just about sharing some of the things that really matter to you and some of the things that are kind of really good support. Does that make sense? So please don't feel uncomfortable about that at all. And then I just wanted to let you know, we do have a quiet room for anybody who just needs a break. So it could get really noisy in here because we have lots of tables and, you know, it could be up to about 70, 80 people in the room. So if you just need to take some quiet time, there's a room just out, if you go out of these doors and just on the left, and it's got DCAN quiet room signs all over the door. So please just use that room as you need to if you need a little bit of space. And the very last thing to say to you is, also on the table are some pledge cards, and we do want you to be able to, by the time you finish today, have written a pledge about something that you're going to go away and do based on some of the conversations you've had or things that you've heard today. So your table facilitators will probably have those to hand, will be nagging you, encouraging you to use those, and we will want to take some photographs or film some of the pledge cards and to show you at the end of the day. So do make sure you're filling those in. So it's just so you know that they're there and you can begin to think about what your pledge might be. So I think that's everything from me. So now I'm going to hand you over to Grace and Sarah, who are going to just take us through the next little bit, really, to get us a bit warmed up, musically.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. What better way of starting 2020 than to be with you to think about how we can make dementia care what it needs to be for those who need it. Thank you and Laura and the team for inviting myself and Sarah to open the meeting with you with music. Many faces look familiar, but for those of you who don't know me or Sarah, I'm Grace Meadows, Director of Music for Dementia 2020, a campaign to make music available for everyone living with dementia throughout their care pathway. And Sarah Metcalf is the Chief Executive of a charity I'm sure you will be familiar with, Playlist for Life. And Sarah's going to say more about her charity and playlists in a moment. But to get us started today, Sarah and I are going to be thinking with you about the power of music for people living with dementia, how and why it matters, and how you can help make it part of personalised care for people living with dementia. For me, music is the golden thread in dementia care across the 6 areas of personalised care we're going to be thinking about today. Care for people living with dementia is often seen as a process of managing decline, but this does not have to be the case, as many of you will know. Music-based interventions in dementia care re-energises people as they experience and enjoy music from their past, connects them with carers and their loved ones through sharing music together, and enables them to contribute to others' well-being through being part of a shared experience in the here and now. And music is a universal experience. It connects us, it opens up communication and enhances and enriches care. Most importantly, music is personal. First, a quick question. Hands up, how many of you consider yourselves musical? Thank you, and I totally agree. For those of you whose hands didn't go up, good news. You are also musical. You too are musical beings. We all have a heartbeat, so we all have a pulse and a sense of timing. And we all have our own style of movement, so we all have rhythm. We all have our own unique voices, so we can create pitch and melodies, and our voices together create harmony. And when we combine all of these elements, we have a style or genre of music. But more than that, we each have the capacity to respond to music and have our own unique and personal relationship with music. And it's with us throughout our lives. And it's that unique and personal relationship with music that tells others who we are. And it gives people a sense of our identities, our history, and what matters to you. So if I was to ask that question again, I'd expect to see all hands go up. We're both social and communicative beings, and those characteristics are what sets us apart and makes us who we are, human beings, people. And when dementia takes hold, the need to stay connected becomes even more profound and necessary. And as verbal skills decline, the feeling of being connected can also feel as though it's slipping away. However, we know that music can both help retain and enhance being connected, and fundamentally, it provides an alternative channel for communication. So for someone living with dementia, being able to use music to communicate, express themselves, and for it to help people around them to see them for who they are, to see the person and not the dementia, is vital in helping to enrich and enhance dementia care. Music enables people to be contributors and not just recipients of care. And we know that music is powerful for people living with dementia because it works at a deeply emotional level and enhances the psychological, social, physical health and well-being of people living with dementia. Importantly, there is also increasing recognition of the value music brings to carers, and I come back to that point about us all being musical beings. Music works with people's abilities and capacities. It's not about what they can't do. Quite the opposite. It's about what they can do. And that's because music is personal. Uniquely, someone's musical preferences stay with them throughout their dementia journey and has an essential role to play in their care pathway, from diagnosis through to end-of-life care. And the way in which we make music personal in dementia care is by finding out what music matters to someone. And we talk very much about the musical menu of choice, from playlists to music therapy and everything in between, be it a dementia disco, a singing group, playing an instrument. It's about what matters to the individual, and that's how we make it personal. It's not about doing music to someone. It's about using music to be with somebody, to enhance and enrich a relationship. And we talk about the right music at the right time, delivered in the right way by the right person. And this is where I'm going to hand over to Sarah, and she's going to talk about the power of playlists.
Hi everybody. I'm just going to tell you a little tiny bit about Playlist for Life before we go into the warm-up exercise where we begin to see this power of personal music really strongly. Playlist for Life is a UK charity, and we've got a very simple vision, which is that everyone with dementia should have access to a playlist of what we call the soundtrack to your life, and everyone who loves or cares for them, who they encounter on their dementia journey, should know how to use that playlist as a bridge, as a way of connecting, and as a way of communicating. And the reason we call it the soundtrack to the life is it's, yes, as Grace says, we're all musical beings, but we all have tunes that mean something very special to us. It's more than preference. It's more than just, oh, I really like Westlife. Well, I don't actually really like Westlife. Well, they're fine, but yeah. It's more than preference. It's those tunes that when you hear them, they get you in the pit of the stomach. Sometimes they give you a flashback feeling, take you back to another time, person, or place. Sometimes it's just that they give you a really deep feeling, and that feeling stays with you throughout your life. And if you can find those tunes for an individual and create them into a playlist, you make something very powerful, accessible at any time, day or night, in a way that music therapists cannot be. You can't have a string quartet in your bedside table, but you can have a wee iPod that you can play it, or you can have a list of songs on the wall that whoever's with you knows what to sing to calm you down. So that's why we believe that if we can all track down our musical identity into a playlist, and we all know how to use it when we meet someone who's got one, then that could really help us in personalising dementia care. As a charity, what do? We share that knowledge. We teach people how to become music detectives, how to explore somebody's life story to find clues to the tunes that will resonate most deeply with them. We support community organisations like churches, libraries, carer centres to set up help points in their local communities to help people who are maybe getting stuck finding that or getting stuck with technology. And at the moment, although our headquarters is in Glasgow, we have more than 400 local help points nationwide, and were awarded 1.6 million by the lottery in the middle of last year to take that to scale across the UK over the next 3 years. We also collaborate with other partners to deliver solutions to barriers that people may encounter. We developed with the BBC Archive, BBC Music Memories, which is a tool where you can, it's not a listening tool, you can't listen to all the tracks because licensing is very tricky, but you can use it as a finding tool. They've grouped tunes by various themes related to people's life, like region, where in the country somebody's from, what age they are. All of that is there available to you to listen to tunes, see if you get a reaction, and then you can store it. There's a sheet, there's a little booklet I've put on the tables, the Music Detective Workbook, which has been very generously helped by the Utley Foundation to produce, which is for children to use with grandparents. It teaches them to become a music detective and find those tunes for their granny. And the other thing that we do as a charity is share that knowledge by providing training for health and care professionals so that you can use playlists as a way of delivering person-centred care and as a way of quite naturally helping care to become more person-centred. Just a quick film, literally 80 seconds, to show you what that means in action. A silent film. This is Lorna.
Bear with me.
Should be sound.
Don't worry, I can talk you through the film. Lorna is singing. Lorna has dementia and lives in a... Should we... We'll pretend it's The Artist. Remember that silent movie that won the Oscar? this is Lorna. Lorna's singing. Lorna has very severe dementia. And, but when she has played tunes that resonate with her, she sings along and has a wonderful time. The tune she's singing here is, I can't remember, I could sing it, always on my mind. And she's singing in this really throaty voice. And she met the journalist who was asking her about it, and she's just saying, he's saying, what does it remind you of? And she says, happy things. And now we meet this gentleman. Now, he lived in the same home as Lorna, and he and she used to fight all the time. And what they discovered, previously, they used to have to give them sedatives to calm down, or they would hurt one another. So what happened instead was they realized that if they put on Carousel, Lorna and the other gentleman could sing together. Instead of fighting, they would start singing Carousel together. And that was one example of how we began to incorporate, or how the care home began to incorporate music into the daily care. And it was so effective that they began to see, at one point Lorna had had a reduction of 60% in psychotropic medication by using music as a way of managing her symptoms and her anxiety and her anger, using music first. And it was so impressive that the GP, who is the lady in the blue, she and her partners in the GP practice began to prescribe it formally and put it on the MAR sheet in the home, so that the care staff were using music first, and that it's now being used routinely in the home, and when the medicine comes back from the pharmacist, playlist appears on the medical record of the individual in the same way as any other medication that they're having. So that was just a little example of, it's better if you can hear Lorna because she's a total star, but, oh, no, sorry, that's your bell. Yeah. But it does signal the segue into the next bit, which is active. How do you find that music for somebody? Becoming a music detective, how do you do that? What is the music that should be on somebody's playlist? In this next exercise, try it for yourself. Have a think about what you would put on your playlist. And in your groups, share that with your groups. There's some little white slips about that size, which I didn't keep one of, so I cannot demonstrate, but I put them round on the tables. And if in your tables, you could speak either to the person next to you or to the table as a whole about what a tune that you would have on your playlist and why. Why is it deeply attached to your memories or feelings? Is it a song from your wedding? Is it the first band that you went to? Is it the one that reminds you of your first love? Is it a tune that a teenage child played again and again and again in their bedroom? What is it that means that when you hear that tune, you have an emotional response to it? And if you could just do that, then we'll feed back maybe about that. Yeah? How many minutes? 5 minutes? I know you do. Because I think people do something. I'm using the bell. Have to... Oh, no. Thank you, everybody. I'm really sorry. This is always the worst bit of this exercise, is interrupting people when you're in the middle of a great conversation, because I do think that it's amazing how music can spark really good conversations. Would anybody be willing to share a story from one of the that you've been sharing in your tables?
Thank you. Okay, so when I was 15, I had my first boyfriend for 2 years. We went out together, and then we split up, and he went off with one of my best friends. And about 3 weeks after we split up, we were at a party, and Lionel Richie, Hello, was playing, and I saw the pair of them smooching on the dance floor. And I was in floods of tears, and to this day, I cannot listen to that song. If it comes on, I switch it off.
That's a heart. Oh, we call those red flag songs, the songs that take you back to somewhere you don't want to be. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm totally over it now. They did get married, but they've since divorced, so there's karma.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe that's karma.
Yeah. Anyone else? There's.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm Jerry Hall, and the tune which always tend to create a lot of motivation, stimuli, however you want to term it. It's by Jim Reeves, and it's Rethank Thee. I'm not going to sing it for you. Yeah, I might ask you to hear. Yeah, and whenever I hear it, it takes me back to my teenage years in Barbados, and also the time when I sang in a male voice quartet, and I was, I sang tenor. I'm still a very good tenor, actually. I'm being modest. And yeah, it also takes me back to the time when I migrated from Barbados and came here. It was a kind of a frame of reference. If ever I felt a bit under the weather, as they say, I thought of Jim Reeves singing "We Thank Thee." I also bring back precious memories of my courting days, and also, when I first got married, and yeah, so up to now, I'm still very thankful for that one. So Rethank Thee, it encapsulates a whole lot of things, just, the joy of living.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we've maybe got time for one more, if there is one. Over.
Thank you. It sounds a bit square, but when I was in my 20s, I belonged to one of the major London choirs. And I, sort of having a record player at that time was quite something. I was a student nurse and then a, qualified nurse, so I was in London. And the one I've just picked out, really, the singer was Kathleen Ferrier, and I just loved her, the feeling she brought to her singing. And so this is quite serious. Art thou troubled? Music will calm thee. I expect many people know that, but it's a lovely sort of calm song. But it just wasn't that one. It was. I would love to hear, if I had dementia, her singing, because it's very calming and, I don't know, enriching.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks to everybody, and thanks for all of you for doing it. I think what that shows us is why the soundtrack to a person's life can be a great way into personalising the care and the connection that you have with them. Because in microcosm, it's that we've heard about these songs. If I'd got my phone, I would be playing some of them, and we could see the reaction that people would have. Maybe not Hello, I wouldn't be playing that one. But it's also that we've all learned something new about people in a way that you wouldn't have done if you hadn't talked about the music, because it's very easy, I think, not to get stuck and not really understand the person who's in front of you when it's become difficult to communicate and connect. But through music, you can open a doorway to being able to do that. So thank you very much. I've put some leaflets about Playlist for Life and the things that we do out and over there if you want some. And please approach me at any time about any of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Now, that brought back some memories, certainly for me anyway. So we're going to move swiftly on, and I'm going to hand over to Ian and Gemma, who are going to take you to our next section. Okay.
Thank you. So Gemma and I are going to take you through the main body of today, which is this, to look towards creating a personalised pathway for people living with dementia. Our bit of the agenda is really just to run over what DCAN is, what personalised care is, and why today is important and why it matters, as an introduction to the activities that are going to come later. So why does personalised care, and today in particular, matter? Personalised care matters for people with dementia because they tell us it's what they want. If you're familiar with the dementia statements, a series of we statements about the expectations people with dementia have in terms of how people support and how they live their lives following a diagnosis. The majority of those are rooted in see me as a person, not as a condition, treat me with respect, someone who can contribute, someone who has something to offer, somebody who needs to be listened to, understood, and supported to live life and make decisions as best they can. It's very clear that that runs through what all the dementia statements, but it also runs through, I'm sure, the people that you know and the people in the room who have dementia. It would very much be what they expect too. It's also important because it's what any of us should expect to receive. There's nothing different about dementia and personalised care. Personalised care is a way of extending and opening up opportunities, ways of thinking and ways of living that everybody are entitled to and should expect and would expect to receive. The TLAP Making It Real statements are excellent articulation, and Martin Walker's here and Sally's here from TLAP, are an excellent expression of what personalised care feels like to individuals and how services and providers and systems should be responding to that. When I shared that with my family and my parents, because I was involved in the working group on that piece of work, all proud of this lovely document and these good sentiments, they liked the document, but they were absolutely amazed that isn't just what happens all normally. We aren't talking about anything unusual here. We're talking about making sure that labels, diagnosis, illnesses, challenges and barriers don't become so significant and so dominant that we forget about humanity and the people living with those challenges. It's important because everyone in this room who's involved in an organisation or a service, or even as a family member or an individual living with dementia, it's what all of us should be aspiring to deliver. It's about aspiring to make sure that our lives and the way we act and respond and connect and work and plan together is all around this focus. So this is what we should be aspiring to. It's also, luckily, what policy currently tells us we should all be doing anyway. So we're not fighting the system, we're not fighting government, we're not fighting documents, we're not fighting the NHS. Because the NHS, in the long-term plan, particular paragraph 1.20 talks specifically about dementia and the way that we're going to seek to transform the way the NHS supports people with dementia through personalised care. This is understood and recognised as the way that we should be delivering our support and our services. And it's important because so often the system, organisations, services, individuals, families even, and people with dementia fail to live up to that promise. And that's not necessarily a criticism. It can just be a reflection of the way things currently are. And that presents a challenge. And it's a challenge that we can only ever going to fix if we come at it in a unified way, in a collaborative way, that we can actually bring together different perspectives, different roles, different ways of thinking and approaching dementia support to actually come up with ways around the challenges that people face. So just to recap, we have the dementia statements. People with dementia express their rights as humans, human rights, through personalisation terms. We have the Making It Real Declaration, which expresses what that looks like in terms of translating that into services. We have human rights legislation that underpins that as a right for all of us. In social care, we have the Care Act with a focus on well-being principles that also reinforces the value and the importance and the urgency of having personalised support. We have the NHS long-term plan that gives us a vision for the next 10 years of the NHS and specifically tells us about personalised care's importance to improving dementia care. And we have the comprehensive model of personalised care, which gives us for the first time a plan, a way forward, a way of actually making some of these principles and intentions that have been talked about for many, many years become tangible and become real. And that's all with the support of the NHS leadership and also the current government. But we also know that's not the reality. We know that people with dementia and other members of society don't routinely experience the full benefits of personalised care. That isn't the lived experience of many people in this room, I'm sure. And the dominant narrative around social care and in terms of health is one of problems. It's one of lack of investment. It's one of barriers. It's one of a system that is responding to crisis and is in itself often described as being in crisis. So there's a challenge there, there's a problem there. Everybody's saying this is what we should be doing, but we know that there are very real and significant challenges that have to be addressed and have to be talked about and have to be overcome for us to make any real progress. There's a quote here, and this is a person from Barack Obama's team, but I think he's adapted it from a quote from Winston Churchill. And if everything's in a crisis, the important thing is not just to focus on the crisis. Don't focus on pointing out everything that's wrong, although that is clearly something that has to be part of the solution and part of what we build and work on and tackle. But we mustn't let a crisis go to waste, because what a crisis can mean, and if we do this right, what a crisis can mean is it gives us an opportunity to change things. And that doesn't mean just more money, and it doesn't just mean investment in a current system. It also gives us an opportunity to look again, take a step back, see, is this the best that we can do? And I think most of us here in this room, and a lot of people I know who aren't able to be here today, would feel very strongly that this isn't the best that we can do. So therefore, that is an opportunity. We need to start to flip things. So often, the difference between a dream and hope is action. So if we just rely on words, if we just rely on principles and just rely on sentiment, then that can make us feel good. It can make us feel as if we're doing something. It can make us feel as if we're acknowledging how people are feeling, how people are struggling, and it helps us feel as if we can begin to address those things and paint a different picture, paint a different vision for the future. But just words, that just becomes dream. And dreams don't necessarily happen. What you need, combined with the dream, is hope. And you get hope from doing, and you get hope from actually taking action and making concrete steps, however small, towards a better vision, a better future. UPC, and why I'm excited about universal personalised care in a way that I haven't been, having worked to try and influence policy towards personalisation for many years now, is that gives us a plan. It gives us a good solid foundation. It gives us 6 components, and all reflect on the tables here today, that can help us take those first few steps. I don't believe it will be a silver bullet. I don't believe in silver bullets. I don't believe it will solve every problem that everyone is going to experience or encounter, but I do believe it gives us a framework, and it gives us the best shot yet, I feel, and maybe the only shot that we're realistically going to get of really making inroads and making a real difference to dementia care. But as I say, a plan is never enough. So it's actually going to be down to us and people like us, who's not in this room, so I'm ringing my own bell there, to act and to make it happen. And today is about the start of understanding, yes, what the vision is, but also what are the practical steps people across the dementia world and across wider society can begin to make through collaboration and working together. So I'm very conscious that there's lots of new faces. We did do a launch event in June. Some of these slides, if you were at the launch event in June, will be familiar to you, but I will also, because there's lots of new faces, I feel I need to rattle through so everyone's clear what DCAN is. So DCAN is a network, it's not a thing. I work for Alzheimer's Society, other members of the DCAN group work for NHS England, Coalition for Collaborative Care. But all we are people who create opportunities for people to have conversations and begin to try and knit different things together. The value and the impact of DCAN is from the contribution of everybody. It's a network, it's not a thing. We have a common purpose, we have the UPC. We need to understand what the learning is from research, what the learning is from providers, what the learning is from carers, what the learning is from people living with dementia, system leaders, commissioners, think tanks. We need to begin to bring all that together into one place to create a cohesive and convincing vision of what this change can look like. So our purpose is to get universal personalised care working for all. So as a plan, it's for everybody. It's a comprehensive model for anyone living with a long-term condition. It's not just dementia. And obviously people with dementia also live with a range of other health conditions as well. So overall, the vision is to make personalised care the standard in the NHS. Our specific aim within DCAN is to get dementia into the heart of that thinking and planning and doing on personalised care and support across health, social care and the voluntary sector. But it's also to make sure that personalised, rights-based approaches are in the heart of all dementia policy thinking and practice as well. A lot of personalisation has come from the disability movement. Dementia has had a different way into this narrative, a different way into this debate, and we need to make sure that the distinction between personalisation and walking alongside people to help them live the life they want to live, the way they want to live it, is also understood, the differences to that towards delivering a person-centred care to a set menu of services as well. So we're going to focus on what matters. We're going to explore what the different interventions are that will help people achieve what matters to them. So UPC being 6 components, there may be other ways that we can make sure that people can focus on what matters. We're going to look at the enablers. How do we get those things happening? How do we get the system changing? And then we're going to look at what actions and relationships are going to be required to make those changes a reality for people. We're going to learn from everybody who's willing to take part and share their insight, share their reports, share their experience, share their stories. And we're going to make sure we take each step based on that knowledge, shared knowledge. And then we're going to go back up the staircase, build those relationships, take the actions, put in place the enablers and the interventions so that the system is more able and more open and more aware of the importance of focusing on what matters to people, not what's wrong with people. And that's not going to be one way for everybody. It's not going to be one way that works in every place in the country. So there's going to be the importance to make sure that those different approaches and the evidence and what works in different contexts is understood. So we'll need to make sure that evaluation happens at each step. In terms of the structure of DCAN, so you're all here today for the assembly, so I know everybody's familiar with the assembly. This is going to be a collaborative co-production space. Today is looking at the vision, the overall picture of personalised dementia care. There will be other opportunities that drill down further into different aspects of the changes that we need to see happen. It's going to be collaborative and it's a co-production space. So there are talks today, there are people on the stage sharing information and views, but the real work is going to happen on the tables and in the discussions and the work that happens following this event to tie all that together. It's going to be a robust exploration of issues and topics from a range of different perspectives. And one of the really pleasing things for today is just the range of interest from commissioners, from providers, from carers, from people with dementia. We've been very pleased and very successful in making sure that there is that robust and range of perspectives going to be heard. We're going to seek to improve decision-making, planning, create new opportunities for further collaboration as well. So the assembly is where everyone comes together and we can have good conversations. But we're also going to organise the work around a series of different hubs focusing on specific areas of interest. So these are going to be special interest groups. It's going to enable us to do deep dive exploration of key themes. It will ensure that we can gather evidence, data and practice examples and stakeholders' views on those topics. So this is going to be where the real work, the engine of DCAN will operate. It will report back into DCAN assembly meetings, and it will also feed directly into the NHS steering group around personalised care as well. It is going to be flexible and adaptable, so it's open to ideas, it's open to change from what we learn as we go along. And it will all be open and transparent. So we hope to benefit from your knowledge and work and insights. And if we're going to be taking that work into the discussions and into the process, it's only fair that that is open and transparent and free to everybody, because that's only through that way of collaborative working that we're going to make sure we all move along together and make sure we get those different perspectives understood. So very quickly, the hubs that we're setting up currently is one on vision, and today's assembly is tied to the vision hub. So what do we mean by personalised care? What impact can it have for people with dementia? How can we present a picture and paint a different view of what living with post-diagnosis of dementia can mean in a personalised vision of the future? The second hub is looking at voice, so making sure that we have that range of stakeholders and different perspectives heard. Obviously, that is going to be crucially important on making sure we get the lived experience voice of people living with dementia, a range of different dementias, different stages, and different communities as well as carers, but also professionals as well, because no one part of the system is going to make these changes happen. So we need to make sure that we have as broad representation as possible, and that voice hub is going to be exploring what is already known about those different groups and stakeholders, but also practically how we're going to get those voices into the debate and conversation. The third one's looking at insights, what evidence, what data is there we can draw upon that gives us a view and a picture of how things currently are. And Ewan from our campaigns team is going to share some of the experience of people with dementia that comes into our fixed dementia care campaign, which shows the size of the challenge more often than not. But also, we also expect there's going to be massive gaps in data and insights. We're going to also be looking at ways we might actually get that information into our learning. The fourth one is Community 360. So you may all be familiar with social prescribing and the importance of community arts activity. We had an excellent presentation from around the value of music, but also art, open spaces, sports and leisure, the importance of people and tackling social isolation. Social prescribing is a massive part of the personalised care agenda. We want to make sure that that is open and accessible and understands the needs and preferences and benefits all that has on people with dementia. So we want to be very much at the heart of that thinking and planning going forwards. We're looking at choice and control. Within that, we're looking at person-centred care and support planning, but also how we make sure the professionals working in the health system know how to have conversations, able to ensure that people have maximum choice and control over the care, support, and also the lives that they wish to live. And finally, we're looking at the thorny issue of innovation and spread. So there's a tendency and a temptation that we find something that works in one place, then let's replicate that somewhere else, let's scale that up. Sometimes that works, more often than not it struggles and it doesn't. So we want to look at a lot of the good thinking and planning and work around that globally, looking at innovation and spread. We want to learn from that insight and research to make sure that scale where we can scale, but also what can be done by spreading ideas and principles and approaches so that things can grow organically, locally as well. I'm just going to hand over to Gemma, who's going to go and give you a quick overview and update on universal personalised care.
Thank you. This will be super quick. We should have put really, really, really quick because, as you can see by the agenda, we're running a little bit behind. So I'm going to try and do this a little bit faster. I'm not going to go through this. Hopefully everybody will have seen Ian's mentioned the comprehensive model, just in case anybody hadn't seen the wonderful blue triangle. it is there, and happy for your facilitators on the table will be able to talk through this in a bit more detail if you've got further questions. But obviously this is the model that we've been talking about. This was launched, we're a year on now from the launch of the long-term plan, and following that we launched the documentation Universal Personalised Care, which was how are we going to implement personalised care over the next 5 to 10 years. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about personalised care, the model, the framework. And like I say, your table facilitators can give you a bit more information on that. There's a couple of things that I just wanted to highlight from the work that we've been doing over the last year, where we really think actually there's some real areas here for us to look at embedding personalised care for dementia. And just to give you a couple of updates, and hopefully this might help with the conversations and the table conversations to spur on some thinking. So obviously we've had the long-term plan, and local systems have now submitted their long-term plans. And what we want to say is they're being reviewed now and they're being looked at. There's an opportunity for us to think, how can we influence that much better? How can we build dementia into some of that? So there's something for you to start thinking about. How do we get involved with our local systems about embedding dementia into that work? Within that work as well, we've got there's a suite of metrics to measure the long-term plan. And we've been really lucky that we've got some metrics in there around personalised care interventions. So we've got 3 sets of metrics in there. One is around personalised care and support plans. So local systems are having to now report on the numbers of care and support plans completed and care and support plans reviewed, which is brilliant. So this is not just dementia, this is across a whole life cycle. So this is great because we're getting this into the forefront now. The second one is around social prescribing. So we're wanting to know the number of social prescribing referrals. So how many people are being referred into social prescribing. And also, obviously, there's been a lot of talk around the social prescribing link workers. So we're wanting to know how many of those are in situ and are employed locally. Again, so that we can build that evidence and find out if systems are really taking this and implementing it. And the third one is around personal health budgets. So local systems already report the numbers of personal health budgets, but actually this is something that we want to see about giving people much more greater choice and control and really scaling and spreading that. So local systems are having to look at this now and across there. So again, starting to think about our vision, how do we build dementia into all of this? A key area around this is around the development of primary care networks. They're still relatively new, they're being formed. They aren't going to solve everything. We've got to give them a chance to get going, get working. But actually, there's some real key areas that we're working with primary care networks around this. There is what is called the DES, is the nickname. Here we go with the jargon. This is the Directed Enhanced Service. So there's 5 national specifications that the primary care networks can work through. And personalised care is one of them. Now, they are published now, they're under consultation, but there's some real key areas around that. A big thing is that we're getting primary care to start really pushing personalised care and support plans to increase people's knowledge, confidence and skills, and how do we activate people in their health to self-manage better. Again, there's that link into the social prescribing, so how do we get primary care to increase those referrals into that? There's a big section around training that wider workforce in primary care. So the wider workforce, we're not just talking about general practitioners and doctors. We've got community pharmacists, nurses, healthcare assistants. We've got a big primary care workforce that we really need to start looking, how do we embed that training and skills there? And again, increasing that knowledge and options around personal health budgets. So there's the key areas around primary care networks. We've also got, which will hopefully start to come out in 2021, is the Personalised Care Institute. So this is about how do we skill up that workforce around this, around embedding personalised care and the wonderful triangle, which it's great to have it up there in a triangle, a framework, but what does that actually mean to frontline staff and in practice? How can we get that to be business as usual and built into frontline staff's training? And then finally, because I am very, very quick, I probably would have talked a little bit more, but we'll speed it up. One of the key things that we're really focusing this year is embedding personalised care as business as usual into other pathways and programmes. Hence why we're here, I suppose. This is where some of the dementia work started around. How do we make, personalised care isn't something extra. It should be business as usual. It should be something that is there for everybody. And one of the ways that we've started to do that is work with internal stakeholders within NHS England, or the teams, or the departments, particularly Claire and the dementia team here. We've done other work in cancer, so work very closely around aligning all the work and the programmes. And this is something that we're looking at other cohorts and other wider programmes such as Ageing Well, the Enhanced Health and Care Homes work. And obviously straight away we can see from those two programmes there's a huge synergy around dementia. So how do we start to bring all that together and really embed all of the work? And it's really important that not only do we work internally with stakeholders, but externally, hence why we're here, because actually it's no good just people sat in a darkened room thinking about this. We've got to be working with people with lived experience, with frontline clinicians to help us develop the vision, but actually not just the vision, the action. How do we take this forward? So we're just going to start through our business planning process now for next year. And one of the things that we're really keen to see is actually, how do we make this business as usual? And, you know, there's a whole wealth of knowledge in the room today and thinking about our vision. And I just want you to start to think, if there's some real robust ideas of actually, this is how we can really embed personalised care and support planning for people with dementia, or this is where we think, you know, we should be doing more social prescribing. You know, if there's some robust ideas, you know, we do have some resource. We're at that process now where we can start to think about that. There isn't an infinite pot. I'm not here with bags of cash, but, you know, we're here to be open to say, actually, this is something we want to do, and we want to be able to resource the work that we're doing. I'm going to cut it there because I'm really aware that we're very short of time. I could talk about this stuff for days on end. Even on my second day back, it's still coming back to me now. So I'll hand back to Jo now, but we will be around over lunch to ask any questions as well.
Thank you very much, Gemma. That's brilliant. Okay, I'm going to... Oh, there you are, Ewan. I couldn't see you. I'm going to hand you over to Ewan. So I'm going to do a little bit of rejigging of the agenda, and our table 1 exercise we're going to shift it to this afternoon. But I'm going to ask Ewan and Sally to speak before... Do come up, Ewan, before we move on to get you to do some work. So this is Ewan Russell from the Alzheimer's Society campaigns team, and I'll let him introduce himself and what he's going to talk about. Thank you.
Where's the beeper gone?
Oh, where did the clicker go? Who's got the clicker?
We'll click it on the computer and we'll see if it works. Hi everybody, my name's Ewan. I work in the Public Affairs and Campaigns team at Alzheimer's Society. Ian's asked me to come along and talk to you today as part of this event about some of the learnings that we've had from our Fixed Dementia Care campaign, some of the learnings from our wider campaign work, some things that we've learnt from working with people with dementia and their families in that work, and hopefully there's some read across into the activities that you're doing today and then the planning that you've got going forward beyond today as well. I want to start by introducing you to Nimisha and Namrata, who are the two women at the bottom left here. Their mother, Usha, and their father, Sharad, who's the gentleman in the picture at the top. Sharad was diagnosed with dementia in 2015. And as part of our campaign work, Nimisha came to Alzheimer's Society and said that she wanted to tell her story and speak out about the experience that she'd had and that their family had had in trying to access care for their father. They told us a story that we hear time and time again about how they had struggled to access the care that they need, and about how when their father had first been diagnosed, they expected that there would be a system of support, there would be a system that would help them through this. But in fact, they found that the system, rather than supporting them, actually became an extra struggle that they had to fight with, and an extra problem that they had beyond their father's diagnosis. So some of the stuff they told us was really striking. So one quote Nimisha told us was, she said, we were a family facing up to dementia for the first time. We needed compassion, empathy, and guidance, but we were spoken to in a way that made us feel like it was wrong to ask for support and information. So part of what we've been trying to do through our Fixed Dementia Care campaign is to try and change those experiences. And we found the most effective way to do that is to root that in people's stories, to root that in people's lived experience, and to try and tell those stories as part of our campaign work. Nimisha said that one time she rang somebody for help, and they asked her what was the emergency. And she just didn't understand how the system wasn't working in the way that she and her family needed. And she came to us for help and to try and deliver a change. So I'm going to talk a bit about, as I say, some of the things that we've learned through our campaign over the past year, but then also some of the activities that we're doing about trying to deliver change based on those experiences. And hopefully, as I say, there'll be some read across into your own work. A lot of what we do through FIX is focused on social care at the moment. I'm conscious we've got colleagues here from lots of different parts of the system, social care and NHS and third sector, and people who are living with dementia yourselves as well. So I'm conscious quite a lot of what we're talking about is social care, but I'm hopeful that in some of there'll be some read across to the work that you're doing today as well. So just to give you, we'll skip through some of this, but just on the background to our Fixed Dementia Care campaign, we're trying to challenge difficulties in the system. It's based largely around 3 areas, so cost, quality and access. And again, we're highlighting challenges with the system, but trying to use that to deliver change. So if people with dementia are going to genuinely benefit from personalised care, then these are some of the challenges that we think need to be overcome, and hopefully that will inform some of your conversations together today. It's important not just to talk about crisis, as Ian said, but to be positive about vision for the future as well. So our vision is that everyone with dementia will be able to access good quality care and support, and will no longer face injustice if they're paying for social care. So that's what we're looking to do. We'll just talk to you about some of our policy research that's informed our campaign. So in our campaign, we've spoken to a lot of people with dementia. They've spoken to us a lot about tone and about how it's important to be honest, and it's important to talk about dignity as well. So when we speak to people about how families want us to describe these challenges, they say that they want a balance between empathy, anger, and urgency. So it comes back to that issue about dignity every time. But they also want us to be honest, true to the reality, without being bleak, people have said to us. But above all, people want us to explain what's going on truthfully, really get to the heart of the issue, but also put forward solutions as well. So I'm just going to talk you through some of the recent policy work. A lot of our policy colleagues who are here today will be able to talk to you about this in more detail. But some of the findings of our recent work, so we know, a colleague from the NHS mentioned workforce earlier, we know that's a central part to finding solutions for this. So 1 in 3 home care staff we found has no dementia training at all. Only 2% of people affected by dementia say there's enough dementia training. But importantly, people say they want the training as well. So 86% of home care workers say that dementia training would enable them to provide better care. So we've been looking for solutions to these problems too. Again, conscious that this is quite challenging, but there's sometimes a bit of a tension between different parts of the system. So when we've spoken to care home managers, often they say that interlink with the NHS isn't working as well as it should do. And I know that a lot of what you're looking at today in terms of integration is looking at finding solutions to some of those problems and some of those feelings as well. I'll skip through some of these slides, but just want to say it's not just about money, it's not just about the way that the system's working, it's about how people with dementia feel as well. So we can see very clearly when we survey people, when we do surveys about how families are feeling, those pressures on the system are really feeding through into people's experiences in their day-to-day lives. So a recent survey we did, 63% of people with dementia said they felt lonely, 62% said they felt anxious, and there's a real disconnect there between the amount that people are having to pay for care, but then the quality of what they're getting at the end. And again, there's some more research there about pressures on the NHS, which are well known to everybody here. I want to talk very quickly about our all-party group on dementia. So the All-Party Group on Dementia is a group of MPs and peers who have an interest in trying to deliver change on dementia, and they come together, and Alzheimer's Society supports that group in the work that they do. We published a great report last year. We'll leave some copies outside at lunch if you would like to have a longer read of it. It was called Hidden No More, Dementia and Disability. And again, it sort of demonstrated the people's experiences of a system, but that it's not just about the health and care system, but it's about social attitudes as well. So although when the stress on the system is feeding through into people's day-to-day experience. So 98% of people who took part in this work felt that they were treated differently to people with other conditions or impairments. 1 in 4 said they'd faced stigma. 1 in 5 had been had to leave the workforce because of their diagnosis, and around a third said they had concerns about transport as well. So again, that idea of it's not just about the health and care system, it's feeding across into wider social attitudes as well. Where does integration fit into this? Well, we've been clear an integrated approach has to be part of the solution. So again, we all know the numbers about how shortages in social care are feeding through into problems in the NHS. So it's costing the NHS hundreds of millions of pounds because people are in hospital and can't get out into the care that they need. Around half of delayed discharges, according to the research that we've done, are due to a lack of appropriate care at the other end. And so we need to see better integrated approaches that won't just deliver improvements in people's quality of life, but it will prove funding challenges across the system as well, and hopefully start to make some of that work better too. So in the context of today, how does that affect integration? How does the work that we've done on our care campaigning through FIX affect you on integration? Oh, God, that's where the beeper's gone. We're asking you to look at, could the money that's being spent inappropriately on people with dementia in the NHS be better spent? And the question really is, what if that £170 million that's being wasted on delayed discharge could be invested in personal health budgets or in other interventions instead? So it's, I think part of your work today is around starting to think about how that system link across can be delivered to improve outcomes for people. I want to finish, I know everybody's looking to get for a break, just very quickly on where we got to with Nimisha and Namrata's story. So we published a booklet last summer called Dementia Care, the Crisis Behind Closed Doors. And this is a really brilliant book. I can say that because I had nothing to do with writing it. It's really, really effective. We've got 12 different families who've come and told us their stories, told us about how the care system has affected them and affected their lives. Again, we'll leave some copies outside if you would like to pick a copy up. But we know that has made, speaking about people's experiences, made a real difference. So when we launched that booklet, the Daily Mail started running a story around some policy research we'd run about how much people were spending on care every month because the support wasn't there for them. And when the Mail ran that story, they said they had an overwhelming response from people. So it's not just about the fact that the numbers stack up. There's a real need. There's a real audience there in terms of people who don't feel that they're getting the support that they need, and they really want to demand change. So the Daily Mail ended up picking that up and running their own campaign through the second half of last year, and really demanding that something was done about it. We ran a petition which Barbara Windsor and her husband Scott Mitchell helped us to deliver. More than 100,000 people signed that, and in the end we ended up, Nim and Nam came with us to Downing Street to hand that petition in, and within his first first 6 weeks as Prime Minister, Boris Johnson had invited us in to talk about how the dementia crisis was affecting people and what sort of things the government could be doing to try and find solutions to it. So what I'm trying to say here, I think, is that, as Ian said, in every crisis there's an opportunity. So it's not just about telling the bad news as well. It's about trying to find solutions, and we know that there's a real appetite within the system, but within government, within families that are living with us as well, to deliver change as soon as we can. What can we expect in 2020? Hopefully we can start to deliver some of that change. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so one more speaker before I get you to start doing some work. You have to earn your lunch here, okay? So can I invite Sally Percival to come up here, who is the chair of the National Co-Production Advisory Group, and she can tell you more about what she does. And
just hoping there's sound for my video.
oh, okay, right, yes. So let's go. I might go and see what's happening.
Yeah, just because it would be helpful to have sound.
Okay.
Is it still good morning? Yes, it's still good morning, everyone. As Joe said, my name's Sally Percival, and I chair the Think Local Act Personal Partnership and the National Co-Production Advisory Group. But more importantly, I am mum to Victoria, who has a long-term health condition, to Alexander, who has autism and a learning disability. This is my partner, Alan, and his daughter, Hannah, who lives with us, has a profound learning disability. And my mum, Audrey, who was diagnosed with dementia in 2010. Now, I want you to be kind to me today. This is the first time I've shared this story about my mum's dementia, so please bear with me. So, today I'm going to share our story of dementia and what really helped my mum, what helped me, and what helped our family. I guess our dementia journey really started the day I went to visit my mum, and I walked into the kitchen and she was holding what she thought was her mobile phone. She said to me, "Sally, I've been trying to ring you all day. You haven't answered your phone. I think there's something wrong with my mobile." She handed it to me and I said, "Mum, that's the television remote control." Now, she said, "Why didn't I know that?" We giggled afterwards, but I realised that was the first inkling I should have had that maybe something was amiss. Now, my mum was always a night owl. And as children, we would often get up and the hallway would be redecorated or the lounge would be rearranged. And one day in the middle of the night, my mum decided to rearrange her bedroom. She fell over and broke her leg. Unfortunately, this break went undiagnosed for a year. And by the time she was diagnosed with a broken leg, the damage to mum's leg was irreversible, and she had lost the ability to walk. Her dementia had really started to show itself, and she'd been in hospital for a whole year. So the decision was taken by professionals, without consulting with us, to put her into a care home. Now, I am not opposed to all care homes, but the one that my mother was put in was particularly bad. And it was a terrible experience for my mum and for me. She lost the will to live, and she became a shadow of her former self. She was being eaten away with bed sores, dementia, and depression. Then one day I went into her room, having gone to visit her. She was lying flat on her back, having been put to bed at 3:30, and she was choking on her own vomit. Her call button had been hidden at the back of a drawer, and I'm sure without my intervention, she would have died. It was at that time that I decided I could stand it no longer, and I decided I was going to kidnap my own mother. And I did. We called it the Great Escape. I got her in my car and I drove her home, much to the upset of adult social care, who often asked my motives of why I had brought her home. My motive was simple. I wanted my mum alive and I wanted her happy. At first, the district nurses, who had to come out every day, were a bit suspicious of me. However, very quickly they began to see my mum shine and heal, and they really helped me to secure a personal budget for my mum. The first social worker I met for my mum was actually really angry when I asked for a personal budget. She said, "How on earth do you know about them?" And I said that my son had autism and a learning disability, and a personal budget worked really well for him. She said, "They may be all right for somebody with a learning disability, but they will not work for older people." However, I did get a social care budget, and without doubt, that personalised budget saved my mum's life. I then began to putting together a team of excellent carers, and we called them Audrey's Angels. It was hard work, but it was worth it. With the excellent care from my Audrey's Angels, within 2 months, her inner self was healing nicely. The bed sores were being treated, and I no longer had that terrible guilt every time I left her. However, as her dementia was getting worse, I started to realise that our relationship was changing. And I was no longer just daughter, I was becoming mother and daughter. And that was a really strange feeling, to become mother to my own mother. However, luckily, my mum retained the use of her arms and her hands. Now, my mum's favourite thing was to have a cigarette and have a glass of wine. So luckily, that really gave her something to look forward to. And using those arms and hands came in very handy. Her dementia continued to take over her sharp mind. However, her spirit shone through at all times, and she dealt with this horrible disease with elegance, humour and courage that she had displayed all of her life. Although I was really surprised when my mother, who I have to say was rather prudish and I had never heard her swear, told the visiting doctor that she had an absolutely hilarious joke for him. The joke made no sense at all, but she had remembered the punchline full on. And the punchline was, only if they've got the fucking bricks. So that was my next thing I had to learn, not to be embarrassed by anything my mum said or did. And she told that joke in various forms to everyone that came to visit. Now, I knew my mum really well. After all, I'd known her for 50 years. I had power of attorney for her, so I was able to make decisions for her and with her, which was so important. However, it is a really serious responsibility, and it was vital that I made accurate choices. I admit I made assumptions based on the fact that I thought I knew her so well. I attended a workshop with Helen Sanderson, and she talked well about her Living Well booklet. It's a guide to help you think about and record what is important to you now and in the future. It's about planning for the end of your life. I didn't think it would help me learn more about my mum, but I thought it would help me capture exactly what she needed and wanted to happen now and in the future. Then I could share it with the rest of our family. I'd now like to play a news clip, if we've got sound. Is it going to work? And there's no sound. That's a real... Oh, yes, please, if you could, that would be great. Talk amongst yourselves. Needs to be quite loud because it's not great quality.
Okay, was it? Isn't it PowerPoint?
It's PowerPoint. Does it help if it's that one there?
Sorry, I thought that would solve it, but it didn't.
I think you can hear it. I can hear it if it can go higher, the sound. It just needs to go a bit louder, because you can hear it. Yeah, full on. Let's try that.
And welcome back. Dementia has become the biggest single killer in England and Wales, overtaking cancers and heart disease for the first time. Official figures show that of the 530,000 deaths last year, more than 61,000 were due to age-related diseases like Alzheimer's.
Yes, it's thought better lifestyles and treatment are behind the shift, but there are also concerns it could have huge implications for social care. Sally Percival, who looks after her mother Audrey, told Damon Green about living with dementia.
Do you want some more hand cream?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Audrey suffered from dementia for 6 years. She's almost deaf now and confined to her bed, and her family knows she hasn't long left. But she's at home at her house in Cumbria, surrounded by the people who love her, and still does the things she enjoys the most.
My mum is still very much present. You know, she still beams when you walk in. There are some days when she doesn't recognise me, but she's still happy to see people. And she's always happy to have a glass of champagne.
Audrey's had a long and happy life, a clever and funny and energetic young woman, a head teacher who loved the outdoors, loved her life in the Lake District when she retired. But when she was diagnosed in 2010, she made sure she set out in writing exactly how she wanted to meet her end. The living will she wrote with her daughter's help means the family can be certain what she wants in her last days.
That's been the most important thing, not only for my mum, but for us as a family to know clearly when we're in a bit of an emotional state, because our mum's dying, we're very clear, we can refer to this living will and know that we're doing the right thing by my mother.
If more of us are to die from dementia than from any other cause, all the more reason, say Audrey's family, to enjoy the time we have.
Without doubt, I've really enjoyed this time with my mum.
My kids are lovely.
They are lovely. I sit with her and I talk with her and I make sure that everything's all right in her world.
And when her time comes, as doctors say it could any day, she will have lived every day on her own terms. Damon Green, ITV News in Cumbria.
Well, her death didn't come anytime soon. In fact, she lived for another 3 years, and I cannot emphasise the importance of capturing Mum's living wishes. As I said in the film, I was a little bit frightened about approaching some of the questions in the Living Well booklet, things like the end of life and funeral planning, but I suppressed my fears and carried on. I made us a coffee and we started talking about her life, capturing her important memories in the booklet. We really enjoyed it, and I was surprised at some of the funny stories and magical moments that Mum shared with me that I had never heard before. Mum's recent memory may be fading, but her longer-term memory was still bright. The next time I visited, Mum asked, "Can we do that booklet again?" So we continued looking at the relationship circle. This sparked new and different stories about people Mum had known and loved. I found the section about what's important to me now and how best to support me invaluable. Mum had a variety of PAs, in fact she had 15, and she had very clear ideas about how she wanted to live her life. And it made it so much easier for her PAs to read in a concise way all about what Mum truly wanted and how they could support her. It was very reassuring when we got to the working and not working section, as there was very little on the not working side. It was apparent that Mum was happy with her life. When we discussed the serious subject of hope and fears, it was very clear her absolute terror and fear was to be forced back into a care home. This information proved invaluable. Later, when Mum had a continuing healthcare assessment, I was told that without doubt my mum would be happier and healthier in a care home. I was adamant that Mum would hate it, but they were firm that Mum couldn't possibly know what was good for her. I showed the panel the booklet that clearly proved what she feared the most was going into a care home. Consequently, she remained at home, but with the addition of night cover funded by a personal health budget, which meant Mum had really good quality care both day and night. And that made a huge difference to her failing health and meant that I could then spend nights at home. We then started planning for the end of her life. It was me that found it difficult. But she was keen to carry on, and I am so glad we did. This section threw up the most astounding information. As I said earlier, I knew my mum so well, but that had made me lead to inaccurate assumptions that if we hadn't have discussed, I would have got so wrong. There was no doubt I found talking about my mother's potential death very upsetting, and that didn't change. But through our discussions, I discovered that not only would I have missed inviting key people to the funeral, I would have actually buried her in the wrong place. And that's a pretty serious mistake to make. When we had finished the booklet, I realised how important it was, because I knew Mum's dementia would only get worse, and this booklet contained lots of her living wishes, so that when she can no longer express her needs and wants, we had them recorded clearly in black and white as a reminder of what Mum really wanted to happen. I didn't want to think about her death, but at least I knew I would get it as right as possible, and she would live out the rest of her life the way she wanted it. And when she was gone, we had a clear plan of what she wanted for herself. We also had a wonderful book of memories. The process of completing this booklet with Mum also gave us time together. It made me sit down and spend time with Mum, talking and laughing, which sometimes I forgot to do within my role as carer. And for that I'm grateful. When the dreadful time did come and Mum became very poorly, she couldn't eat and drink, and I knew that it was time. My mum had been very clear that she didn't want to suffer, and so upon reading her absolute rational wishes, it was agreed by the doctor that we would allow her to get her final wish. So her carers and I had a bottle of champagne, sat around her bed playing cards, which was her very favourite thing to do, and I hope the sound of us all playing cards gave her comfort. Mum died in her own home, in her own bed, surrounded by people who loved her, with champagne on her lips, just the way she wanted. Her battle was over, and my years of worry, tears, and constant attachment to my mobile phone, expecting calls from her PAs at any time, were over. No more dementia, no more pain, no more suffering. Dementia creates such a bizarre and unfair grieving process for families. I feel like I lost my mum quite a long time before she died, but there was no funeral and no grave to visit. But that meant that when she did die, I had almost come to terms with it, and I actually really enjoyed her funeral because we did it just the way she wanted it and just the way she planned. So although she may be gone, in so many ways she lives on with us. When my mum was dying, she said she didn't want us to grieve, she wanted us to smile. So I'd like to just leave you with this poem in honour of my mum. Should I die and leave you here? Should I die and leave you here a while? Be not like others sore undone, who keep long vigils by silent dust and weep. For my sake, turn again to life and smile, nerving thy heart and trembling hand to do something to comfort weaker hearts than thine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sally. That was very powerful. And I hope, really, as we get into the rest of today, which is really about action and your thinking, we can remember all of the things that Sally has said and all of the things that all of the speakers have said about the importance of some of the work that we need to do and take that forward into creating the vision. Okay, so enough sitting and listening, you've now got to do some work. So table facilitators, I'm jumping straight to exercise number 2, and instead of 50 minutes, you've got 40 minutes, okay? Just to give you warning there. So, really, as we said right at the beginning of the day, what we want to... Now everybody's running out of the room. We can't run out of the room now. I know you need the loo. It's all right. Don't worry. What we're here to do today is to begin to develop a vision around personalised dementia care. And we are going to use the process of developing a one-page strategy in order to be able to do that. So what we mean by a one-page strategy is basically these big posters that you will see on the big boards around the room, okay? Now, you are working or sitting on a table that you've been allocated based on a preference that you have shown when you applied to come to today. Applied sounds really formal, doesn't it? Sorry. Or requested, based on either an area of interest or experience that you have. So we have a couple of tables that are looking at personalised care and support planning. We have a couple of tables looking at social prescribing, and then I can't work out what the rest of the tables are because your things are facing the other way. Thank you very much. So that I know is personal health budgets. We have a choice table here, a shared decision-making table here, and that means that must be supported self-management over there. So before we really get into this, can you check you are on the right table? If you look at your badge, it'll tell you your name, and it will tell you what table you're meant to be on, okay? There are spaces on tables, so it's not a really big issue if you do think, oh, I might go to that table that's got a few spaces on. So the work that you're going to do now in creating the vision is going to be focused on the component, this is what Gemma was talking about and Ian was talking about for the table that you're sat on, okay? So rather than thinking about wider personalised care, at this point for the next few exercises, you're going to be thinking about this one aspect for the table that you're sat on. So our first step in doing that is beginning to think, okay, for the component that I'm thinking about today, what are the problems we are trying to solve? What is not working well right now? And I think we've been given a bit of a hint about some of those things with the things that Ewan was telling us from his work with the campaigns and from what Sally has just told us in the work that she, or the experiences that she has had. So what you're going to start doing in these first 40 minutes is beginning to think about, so what are the problems that we're facing at the moment in relation to the component that you're talking about. There's some questions that can help, which your table facilitators have got in front of them. So it's, what should we be doing differently? What are the problems we're trying to solve? Who's not served well by the current system, really? And what is not working? Our really, really basic question that really helps. What's not working well? And then what I want you to do, having come up with all of those issues, is prioritise the ones that you want to think about the most, and then take those forward and flip that around. And imagine that in 18 months' time, we've taken that problem, that issue that you identified, and we've actually been really successful in doing something about that and telling us what that would look like. And from that, what we're going to do is develop what we call I statements or we statements. And that's just really saying, if we're really successful at this, then actually this is what people would be experiencing, this is what the workforce would be experiencing, this is what the system would be seeing, and actually writing those things down. So for example, people would know, and you might have that as an I statement, I would know whether or not I'm eligible to receive a personal health budget. That's the kind of statement that we would be looking to make. Now, your table facilitators do know what they're doing. If you're struggling, just look confident, guys. Honestly, look confident. If they're struggling, I can pop around to the tables. I'll abandon my table to Ian. What we want to get to, we're going to go to lunch about 10 minutes late. Apologies for that. And what we want to get to by lunchtime is that you have a number of statements under each of those three perspectives. So we're going to be thinking about this in terms of people and carers, thinking about this in terms of the workforce, so those people working at the front line, in particular with people living with dementia, and the whole system as well. What would success look like? That's our starting point. So we're working on the very top section of our vision at the moment. We're going to get on to, well, what do we need to do? And that's when we start thinking about campaigns and booklets and all the kind of things that might be practical ways. So hold your thinking about practical things. First step is to say, what does success look like? What does really great personalised care look like for those different groups of people? Okay, is that all right? So probably your first task on your tables is to make sure you've got somebody who can help keep you to time, and also remember that jargon gatekeeper that we talked about as well. Okay? Off you go.